Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting. We're going to call to order.
Commissioners Brown, Fuller,
Present.
Harris,
Present.
Herr, present. Vice Chair Rodriguez,
Present.
Chairman Little.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Harris?
Everyone can please put their hand over their heart and repeat with me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any presentations whatsoever? None? Okay. We have no cards on agendized items. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from July 11th? Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Four, one abstaining. Are we continuing this, Jocelyn? What are we doing as far as I know?
Yeah,
We briefly talked yesterday.
On the two continuing business items, I know, Chairman Little, that you've been trying to reach out to Pastor Johnson and get a meeting scheduled with some of the ministerial community concerning the the food distribution
Correct.
ordinance. We did present at the Homeless Impact Commission, I believe that's the name of that commission, shortly after last month's CJC meeting, and they expressed a lot of interest in the ordinance. They were very supportive of it. They also wanted to form an ad hoc committee. So Commissioners Hawley and Acosta from that commission want to meet with the members of our ad hoc committee on this when you do get an opportunity to meet with the pastors in the ministerial community. It's my understanding that we're still having a little trouble reaching out to them, but we'll work as hard as possible to make that happen. On the other item, the human trafficking ordinance, we have made contact with the head of that team, and
captain from the human trafficking unit.
Right. So it looks like we're going to be able to try to get them up here sometime in the next couple of weeks to meet with that ad hoc committee and move that forward.
Everyone good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Any questions whatsoever? Okay. We'll move right along then. You're up. Let's go right to the reports. How are you, dear? Long time. Could have sworn I saw you this morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. So on our Crime Commission report for June stats, I added a couple of information to some of our slides. And for the burglary suppression team, our Crime Commission report, our burglary suppression team had 16 arrests for June, 1 search arrest, 1 warrant arrest, or 6, I'm sorry. They recovered 1 firearm, and they recovered $75,000 worth of property. The burglary suppression team had 6 solved burglary cases in the month of June, which each case resulted in a felony arrest. On the next slide is our LANCAP. They had 44 arrests for felony arrest. They had 25 misdemeanor arrests with a total of 69 arrests. They had a total of recovered 10 stolen vehicles and recovered 1 firearm. For our robbery team, they had 23 felony arrests, 5 search warrant arrests, 1 firearm recovered, with a total of 29 robbery arrests, 10 armed and 9 strong-armed. On this next slide, this is some of the highlights that our robbery team had. The robbery team did not identify any serial robberies which appeared to have the same MO during the month of June. A total of 25 robberies were written during the month of June, of which 6 were investigated and determined to be crimes other than robbery and cleared as appropriately. We had 6 SD robberies were documented during the month of June, which were committed by different people taking food and beverage from items from locations. Sorry, I'm going too fast. The last one is 2 robberies were determined during the month of June, identified as domestic related incidents. 2 of the reported robberies involved friends or associates of the victims, and 2 of the robberies reported appeared to be narcotic-related incidents. For our crime prevention, in June we did our Lancaster's Most Wanted, our neighborhood watch meeting, and business before breakfast. Go to the next slide. In the month of June, we had our Lancaster's Stations Open House, where we had probably over 500 attendees. It was a good turnout for our community. We have our monthly coffee with the deputy at Crazy Autos. And we did our torch run with our special athletes. And then we did our tip a cop at Crazy Autos. And then this last slide was us serving dinner to our homeless at the Salvation Army shelter at 60th West and Avenue I. For our next presentation is our monthly trends for our next slide. Ready? For June, I know in your copies you showed 2, but it's actually 3 here on the slide. For the month of June, we had 3 homicides. One which was 2 brothers who got into a verbal argument with each other. It escalated where one brother stabbed the other brother. He ended up at the hospital and passed away. So that was one of our incidents in June. The other one was a carjacking victim who shot the suspect. That eventually will end up in a different stat or column and be taken out of our homicide stats. And the third one was Anthony Avalos, who both parents, or the mother and the boyfriend, are both in custody. So, our next slide. Our rapes are still going down. For our robberies, there's a slight trend going down. Our aggravated assaults are also coming down, from 80. So a slight trend down on our aggravated assaults for June. Our domestic violence, our average is 13, and it's only creeped up by 2. On our burglaries, they were down, but they're slightly, coming up. And then hopefully they'll see a trend in the next month's stats. For our larcenies, we have our 180 or 179. For our grand theft, we were able to determine that there was a crew going around stealing cars in that month of June. So you'll see in the July stats when we come back in September that there's a significant drop in that. And then I'm hopefully for that presentation in September, I'll have I know I was supposed to have it today, but our group of investigators for the vehicle theft will come back in September to give you a presentation of what they did and how they caught this crew and give you more details for the July stats.
How many in a crew?
I don't know. I think they said 5.
Really? Bless you. Bless you. Bless you.
I think they took 5 into custody. It was a group of people who were working out of. It wasn't so much that they were all an organized crew. It was 3 different individual locations and a mobile home park on the east side. They were all associates, maybe not working so much in concert, but they took 5 in total out of those 3 locations. And in fact, I know we're talking about the June numbers because you guys want a little perspective, but if you look at the July numbers that we have now, there was about 25 less, or 20 less, so it was about 25% drop
Okay.
in GTAs for the month concerning that. And we saw similar drops, not that dramatic, in both residential burgs and commercial burgs only. Also, and in fact, if you look right now at our residential burglary numbers, we're down year-to-date 1.82%. And if you remember last year, at the end of the year, we were down 22, I think it was around 22% for residential burgs. So that spike that we saw in July, they made a number of arrests of burglars and car thieves that have dropped it down a fairly significant percentage for July. And you'll see those numbers and slides at the next presentation.
Thank you, Captain.
Sure.
To continue on the arsons, we had 2 for the month of June. And then for our next slide, I added this next slide to,
Awesome, I love it.
thank you. We added the 3 to compare our city to the 2 other cities, which is Palmdale and Santa Clarita. And we do have a slight increase in our crime from year to date. Palmdale and Santa Clarita seem to show a small decrease. But like Captain was saying, our residential burglaries, we had 83 in the month of June, but out of 83, 45 were residential, 38 were others, buildings like a vacant house, a shed, a garage, and we have seen a drop in our crime, as like a negative 1.53%.
Yeah, that 83 was total. That wasn't residential.
So, and that's it for my presentation. Oh, and then we have our leaps. If we can put our leaps.
Can't forget that.
Thank you. Go ahead. Is it up there? Sorry. Oh, there we go. You can see it. I can't see that far. Sorry. Okay, so for our LEAPS presentation for June, during the month of June, we logged 83 LEAPS service calls supporting tactical field operations. LEAPS was dispatched 98 times, totaling a 20.8 hours, and was airborne, providing strategic surveillance for a total of 297.1 hours. Out of those, we had 16 arrests, 26 fights and assaults, 8 burglary and robberies, 10 traffic stops. This is what they helped with while they were over seeing our deputies. And 20 of them were other offenses, suspicious activity, and they were able to help us with 7 persons with guns. And on the second page, as far as percentage-wise, we had 35% of people, 11% property, 17% arrests and detentions, 13% vehicles, and 28% observations. They did help us with, they had a great display at our open house, and a lot of people came up to them and asked them a lot of questions about our LEAPs. So there was a lot of interest in there, and there were a lot of people that were grateful for what we have to help our community keep them safe. So, any questions?
Something we talked about last month also was the new redeployment of our assets, and we had started kind of shifting them over last month. That redeployment went into full effect Sunday of this month, so we have a significant number of units have been redeployed, mainly on PM shift. A couple on day shift overlap, 7 days a week to make sure we have coverage throughout shift changes and so forth. But the lion's share of them are on PM and PM overlap, working for either 2 to 10, 4 to midnight, or 4 p.m. to 2 a.m., depending on the unit, including a no-call 2-man car that is just focusing on our busier areas as identified by the crime analysts. They're always looking at that. And then throughout the month of August, I'm not sure if this was brought to the commission or not. I know we've talked about it in City Council, but Special Enforcement Bureau will be up Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights throughout August, doing saturation patrol. Same thing, basically in the high busier areas as identified by our crime analysts. A lot over like on the beach and J2, that kind of strip down there. But it's the areas identified by our crime analysts as our busier areas right now. We're also going to have OSS. They're always out. We have OSS assigned to the station, but we're going to have additional OSS assets out those nights when they're on patrol also, so that if there's a gang nexus, they will have the subject matter experts available to them to help out in their endeavors also.
Thank you very much, Captain. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Howard.
One other question on this three-city crime comparison. Is this going to be something we'll be receiving on a monthly basis?
Yes, sir, you will be.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
And what's our coverage area compared to the other two? Does Lancaster have a larger area than Palmdale, Santa Clarita, as far as coverage?
Square mileage?
Yes.
They're fairly similar. Santa Clarita has a much higher population. It's if you just look at the general area, I'd say Palmdale and Lancaster have a fairly similar square mile coverage. Population densities are different here and there with them. But I think, was there a population slide in there? Or
No,
no?
there wasn't. I can put that in there on the next one with the
Okay.
information of
That'd
population.
be great.
Thank you.
And are these numbers pretty much consistent as what they normally are? These comparisons?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
In other words, obviously Lancaster has the highest increase in crime. Is that generally the way it is between the three cities? As
No,
far as
it depends.
comparison?
Like last year, we were down almost all last year, where they were up in the beginning of the year and came down. So that will always vary some. There's a lot of stuff that can affect changes in crime rate, a number of different things. Housing can affect it. Weather can affect it. Population issues can affect it. There's a number of different things that can affect it. They'll all go up or down, but it changes over time. We're not always higher than them. They're not always lower than us. This year, like I said, last year we were down. This year we've seen an increase, which is why we've done our redeployment. We're trying to switch things around. And, we always did a really good job. Our teams did a great job of solving things on the back end. They had a really high solve rate, but with the redeployment, we're hoping that more folks on the street will prevent the crime from happening. So instead of solving on the back end, we're stopping them on the front end. But looking at the preliminary numbers, I show us we're still up, but down quite a bit off of the June high. But those were preliminary. I want to get them solved before I report them. But looking at them, we show a fairly significant drop, just preliminary. I'm looking at maybe 5% lower. Like looking at yesterday, I was showing 10.68% preliminary as of yesterday morning, where
Gotcha.
it was 16.5 on that. But that number will change every day, because the number you see here is final for the end of the month, where my preliminary numbers are changing every day as the report numbers get drawn, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Can we compare the numbers on a percentage between Lancaster and Palmdale?
Can we compare the numbers? Yeah, it's right there in
the
that.
total numbers, yeah. So we have the down at the bottom. It's just the total percentage. Is there a chance of looking at those compared to Palmdale and Lancaster only, as far as each one of those from the Part 1 crimes in city areas?
Are you talking about in categories?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you want that, we can put that on there.
Okay, that'd be great. Great job. This chart is really cool.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Cook?
My question is, are these reported into the station or calls that the station went on?
Reported, sir. Yeah, actual, like, victims reporting crimes.
Maybe what would clarify that is knowing the difference between RAPS data and actual LARCIS data. RAPS is more tied to
Yeah.
initial calls for service. So maybe what we can do is do a presentation at the next meeting about the difference so people understand the difference and because there's a significant difference on how things are initially reported for a response and then what they can work out to be. Also understand too, a lot of when you look at percentage, you can have low frequency crime that can spike things like homicides, for example. Okay, or some categories of crime that changes your percentage significantly. But the biggest driving number that we see here, which has always been kind of a trend for us at Lancaster, is larcenies. So hopefully with this redeployment and moving assets out there to be more proactive rather than reactive, like again, our case of solvency is second to none to anyone in the county, but we got to do a better job on the front side of these cases, and that's
on this,
our goal.
And this chart here is showing the comparison between Lancaster, Palmdale, and
Right.
Santa Clara, the numbers.
Right.
Yeah, perfect. Like this chart. This is, yeah, awesome.
Any
Any,
other questions?
no? Anything else for, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
CHP, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Great to see you.
All right. Good morning. So I did a comparison this time between July of 2018 and July of 2017, just to kind of compare and contrast the same time period. Total crashes in CHP jurisdiction for July of 2018 was 230, and unfortunately we had 5 fatal out of those 230. Total crashes in July of 2017 was 227, so just about the same, with 3 fatal collisions last year. So both categories are up. Total DUI traffic collisions in 2018 were 10. Total in 2017 were 23, so we're doing quite a bit better with regard to DUI crashes. So far this year, we've had 21 fatal collisions in our jurisdiction. Last year, we had 27 total for the entire year, so we're on track to definitely exceed that if we don't bring that number down over the next several months. The top accident-causing factors are 22-350, which is the speed, 22-107, unsafe turning movements. Most of those are on the 2-lane roadways where people are drifting off to the side and then overcorrecting and coming head-on with another vehicle, or rolling off into the desert. That's tends to be one of the biggest problems that we're experiencing out here in this particular area. And then pedestrians. A lot of pedestrians are getting hit. Some of them are questionable whether they were accidents. Some of them appear to possibly have been suicides, but a lot of times there's no way to tell. Sometimes you can investigate and determine, but a lot of times you can't tell. We've had 65 misdemeanor DUI arrests for the month of July, 10 auto theft recoveries total, which also resulted in 4 arrests for auto theft. And that's all I have for you today.
Commissioners, any questions? Eric? No? Eric, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
District Attorney,
Good morning.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you. Just some few statistics. This year, July, 256 new felony cases, 725 misdemeanors compared to the same period last year. 241 felonies, 775 misdemeanors. So up slightly on the felony filings and down slightly on the misdemeanor filings. Statistically, I think it's pretty insignificant. Those are pretty consistent numbers. And I guess the only other thing I would ask is if there's any other information that the committee would like from the district attorney's office. I know we provide the filing statistics. I don't know how useful that is or helpful that is to the committee in terms of the functions that you serve. One of the things that our office is doing is looking at other methods of prosecution that don't involve, prison, county jail. We had last week we had a Veterans Court graduation. I think it was the first one that they've had in a while. So we have a Veterans Court program and a number of other what are called alternative sentencing court programs that we're implementing. I know I spoke with the judges. I know they would be more than willing to come in and talk to all of you about those programs if it's something that you're interested in hearing about. And those are some really good programs that we're working with the court in terms of alternative sentencing, sort of something contrary to county jail or state prison. So if there's any other information that we can provide, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm just not sure what exactly it is that I can help this committee in terms of that goes.
I think it would be nice to hear from the judges.
I think so too. I think too also what helps us, what we can do as a commission, as a city, to help you. I mean, that's what we're here for, to make recommendations and see what that. So without the information coming from you on the trials and tribulations that you go through, it would be beneficial to all of us to sit there and say our problem areas are this, this, and this, and this, and this is what we're constantly fighting. Thank goodness, Mr. Dorico and the city has been, keeps us incredibly informed, and your job is, it's endless at times. I commend you. So. Yeah, hearing things like that would help us understand exactly, and any type of recommendations that you can bring to us, and the difficulties that you're finding as far as legislation. Mr. Cook and their offices keep us abreast on other items that are coming down the pike, but that would be extremely helpful.
Well, from a public safety standpoint, the biggest issue that I think is confronting not just this community, but all of the communities is really the early release programs that are taking place at the Department of Corrections. I did talk to one of the DAs in my office the other day, had an individual, and I wish I could remember what the charge exactly was, but it was a violent felon he had a prior violent felony in on a new felony, was supposed to have served 8 years in state prison, and my understanding was served 2 years. A year, 2 years ago, that would have been at least an 80%. The person should have served little over 6 years in prison, and they were out after 2 years. The propositions that have been, passed over the last few years there's so many of them, and there's so much language in there. I can't even tell you, what's going on with a lot of that legislation. So I only know that the ramifications, which are that people that were serving more time in prison aren't. And that's going to manifest itself in more crime. We're spending a lot of our time dealing with violent felons, because those are still people that we're able to send to prison for a long time. A lot of the other individuals, there's just a lot of programs out there that are available, and a lot of those programs are good. The Veterans Court program is a great program. It was a very successful program. The drug court program is a great program. There's a mental health program that we have up here in Lancaster that they don't have in other areas of the county. The acronym is ARC, and we have a DA that's specifically assigned to run that program. That's a great program. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the office that we're doing to try to deal with the low-level crime that's out there. But the problem that we're having is even now the violent crime is being funneled into some of these propositions that's resulting in people getting out of prison really sooner than they should, and a lot of those people aren't being rehabilitated, so reoffending.
Exactly. With that, it'd be interesting to know what that percentage would be as far as repeat offenders. Somebody gets that early release, and there's, what's the odds of them going and doing the same thing and saying, I can do this stint again without any, issues. I know there's other ramifications that come with that.
Right.
You know, but it's kind of one of those things that we look at and say, you know, what are we doing? How can we make things different? And it's a tough chore.
Well, the other question I have is, are we, a lot of these prisoners that are being released early, are we getting more than our share in this area? Are they being released and coming to this area more so than other areas of the county?
I can tell you, I'm sorry, Bob.
Okay, no, it's okay.
As for Prop 47 releases, from the initiation all the way through, we received some of the highest numbers of the county. And actually, with Captain Weber, we can probably bring you some reports back as it relates to Prop 47, how it's being tracked based on absconders, how many folks report they're coming to the area and never show up here, or other areas and then are found here, and then the number of repeat offenders, because that will probably shock you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the continual numbers of constantly doing this. Now remember, when this first came out, we had a lot of people that were on parole that intentionally committed some lower level crime to come back out under Prop 47 on probation. Okay, so there's a lot of things that have come to gaming this system to a certain degree too. So we have folks from probation here, and starting next month, I'd like to have permission to bring them forward too to present a report on AB 109. And I think what Mr. Sherwood's talking about is they're having to be very creative on how they're managing resources in their office and at the courts now, because the number of things that are actually considered violent felonies have gone down significantly of what that criteria is. And a lot of these cases are misdemeanors or very considered low-level felonies. Well, we have to have a mechanism for having folks pay their community back for whatever violation they've occurred here. And I appreciate him working with him on things he's doing with diversion, as well as what's happening with community service and all these aspects of what's going on. So to paint a larger picture, I think it'd be great to have the judges talk from their perspective too, because how their courts are inundated with these cases of continual people they see over and over and over again.
Yeah, I'm going to be meeting with them this afternoon, so I'm more than happy to extend an invitation to come down. The other thing that, and I don't know if this pertains directly to the district attorney's office, but I'd be interested to get some information on unreported crime. I was in a sporting goods store last week, and I saw what we'd qualify as an Estes robbery and a petty theft in the 10, 15 minutes I was there with my kids. And I was talking to the manager, and basically she was overwhelmed. I mean, they were just coming in, taking stuff and leaving. They weren't even reporting the crimes. So I'm seeing the statistics, and I'm not sure how accurate those are if you're not taking into account unreported crimes. I don't know how you get information on that, but like I said, I was in Dick's, the sporting goods store for 15 minutes, and I saw those two things. So, I mean, that was something, as a citizen, I was concerned about.
I think there's a lot of that, more than what we think.
Yeah.
I've seen it from the retail side of it too. Yeah. You know, and probation. It'd be interesting to me too, in the commission, that the caseload that they have to deal with up in this area. You know, as far as how many they have to keep track of. That would be a very, very interesting part, because I know what you've gone through, Lee, over in the past on certain items with Section 8 and this and that, and having to downsize certain items. And here we are, early releases, more people coming into the area, what their caseload would be per individual.
Remember, someone now who gets sentenced to 180 days in the county jail does about 15 to 16 days.
You're too many.
Yeah,
County
it's gone down even more.
365 days is computes to 18 days right
Yeah.
now.
Year reduced to 18 days by the time they do the good time, work time, and then they do the early release percentage.
What- Captain, explain to me what good time and work time.
Well,
But I mean, they've got sentenced, but what is it that they get good credit for? By showing up to a breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I'm confused.
yeah, it's an automatic number. They don't generate any kind of, and forgive me, I haven't worked custody for a lot of years, but they compute it based on, are you generating any kind of violation reports in there? Are you working? But basically, it's automatic. If you stay out of trouble, and by trouble I mean trouble within a jail setting of trouble, it's halftime, and then there's different formulas that they have to use to keep within compliance on the population levels that are mandated by law, and that's all a formula that's done down within the custody division. But the number I'm getting is on a county lid, 365 days, if you accumulate all your good time, work time, and with all the computations, it's about 18 days.
And
what
how-
they're doing.
What level of crime are we talking about?
Well, if they're sentenced to county jail, it'd be misdemeanor crimes. But with the AB 109 and all the realignment, we have people who are serving felony sentences in the county jail. Now, those will be a little bit differently. That's computed different. I'm talking about if you're sentenced on a misdemeanor crime to 365 days or less. The folks who are coming down from state prison under realignment and being housed in county jails, I believe there's an individual at Central Jail who is going to do a 40-year plus sentence at Central Jail, which creates a whole new host of problems because county jails aren't designed to hold people for 43 years. They're designed to hold people for a year or less.
How many misdemeanor crimes can you create? I mean, as far as an individual before it gets knocked up to something different. Before you get more than 18 days, or is it just misdemeanor, misdemeanor, misdemeanor? Interesting. So a person can go out there and.
You talk about the nuances of. I just read an article in the paper the other day that said it's less people are recidivating and going back to state prison, but I think there's probably some nuances to that when you consider that prior to Prop 47 and Prop 57 and all these different propositions, we had a lot of crimes that were felonies that are now misdemeanors. So these folks are getting out of prison when it was a felony and they're committing the same crimes, but now they're misdemeanors, so they're not going back to state prison. So that would be the interesting number to know, and I couldn't give you that. But there's a lot of nuances to crime stats that you don't think about.
There's felonies too. So you could have a domestic violence case where the person receives probation and a year in the county jail, and they're out after 18 days. That's a problem. They get 180 days. It's book and release, so they're doing 0 days on it. So that doesn't give. Some of these cases aren't the type of cases where you would get state prison right out of the first offense. You go to prison. Probation is usually a good option, but if we could give them 30 days in the county jail or 60 days in the county jail, it would give the victim an opportunity to make some decisions about their safety. And when we sentence them to 180 days, even 365 days, which is the most we can sentence somebody to without sending them to prison, 3 weeks isn't a lot of time necessarily to get yourself organized and get someplace safe.
It's kind of hard on you to sit there and say, we know we can get a year. Okay, we'll take 3 weeks.
Right. Well, county jail isn't really an option for us anymore. We work with community service, trying to do community service, open up some avenues for people to pay their debt to society through community service, but there's public safety issues as well. And jail is we know that the victim is safe if the person is in custody. If they're out doing community service, we can't protect.
Has there been any stats as far as repeated evidence? I mean, repeated cases of domestic violence when a person is released in 15 days?
That's a great question. I don't know whether. I mean, there are all kinds of anecdotal examples of situations where people were released early from prison, and those have resulted in violent, up to murder. I mean, there's all kinds of anecdotal examples of that.
On domestic violence, who knows if it's been reported?
Yeah, but if
a lot of time it's not.
But if it is reported
It's not.
and they go to jail and they're out in 15 days, I would think the person that reported is in serious danger.
Correct.
But a lot of times they don't.
Well, and then also, I don't know if you were following, but there was actually a ballot measure that was put out trying to, I think these propositions were passed by the people with good intentions, but there's always the rule of unintended consequences that people don't foresee. And there was actually a ballot measure they had out trying to shore up some of the holes that Prop 47 put into the system, and it didn't qualify for the ballot.
Is it only happening at county jails, early released, or state jail too?
It's state prison as well.
State-
Oh, so it's all over.
Yeah. No, I think it would be great to have, if the judges could come in and if their schedule permits and kind of give us an
Okay.
overview. That would be nice. So.
Can I respond to the person that I get the emails from every month and let them know that
That'd be
they're
great.
available? Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you, sir, and everything you do. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I know. Jocelyn, how are you?
I'm thoroughly depressed after that conversation. I don't actually have anything to report this month for you, but feel free to reach out to me if there's some information you want from me concerning code enforcement or other efforts in-house to try to work on quality of life issues. I'm happy to put together something if you have any specific questions for next month.
Okay, great. Mr. Dorico, sir.
Yeah, today I'd just like to report out some activity that with our new contract service providers, with Russ Bailey and Mike Cooper in the back, working with our staff. One of the things we've focused on since the beginning of the year, well, two things actually in their realm of responsibility. One of them has been internet cafes. So far, an interesting thing in this day and time, we actually have people that come in and apply for a license for an internet cafe. And I don't know what you would need an internet cafe these days for, currently with smartphones and everything else. So through a couple of Captain Weber's special assignment deputies to the city, one in particular, Russ Williams, he's put together cases on these and served search warrants with some of my staff, with Josh Wagner, as well as the guys in the back. And so far they've hit 10 local internet casinos. They actually turned into gambling places, okay, and they're 10 so far, and just on an update from Russ, they've seized over $1 million worth of equipment and gaming machines. So apparently, and I should have brought some pictures, and I'll do that in the future with Josh and them loading these giant gaming machines that are $10,000 a piece, and then a significant number of cash. That'll all be going for an asset forfeiture basis that will probably bring resources back to the city with whatever the amount of money that they receive for them. But I think the other thing that's been interesting in talking to Captain Weber is it's also had an impact on larceny crimes and things in the immediate area of these internet cafes. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of they generate a lot of different crimes out of there. You have the gambling, so we see a lot of drug activity. People will see folks win money, and then that turns into assaults or robberies. So when you shut one of those establishments down, it's just not the gambling aspect. It's a whole lot of category 1 crimes, part 1 crimes, and a lot of quality of life type stuff also. So that they shutting those places down make a huge difference on a number of levels.
How many do we have, or if any?
Well, right now we still have a few out there floating, but it has been kind of interesting working with our finance department that takes the initial application, that initiates the investigation. And then as we move forward with them, these guys have done great work with controlled buys and things out of the place with undercover folks, and then which initiates a search warrant, and there we go. But I've been out, I actually went out with them one night, and the amount of cash and everything, so it's obviously very lucrative for these folks. And then if you look at the impact around, it makes sense, okay? So it is definitely where they are, what the collateral damage that occurs from the relation to that business has been in certain neighborhoods where they're at. And these things are popping up all over the place. The guys shut them down, and one pops up somewhere else.
Are they all in commercial centers, or are they operating out of homes as well?
So far, they've all just been out of commercial centers, and obviously, they're leasing these places based on an internet cafe, and that's exactly what they're represented as. It's actually just gaming. Computers alone, I don't even know how many computers, monitors, servers, and things that we've also pulled out of there. That's part of that equipment issue.
Is there? We have ordinance that prohibits. Can we eliminate? Can you say we're not going to allow this? Can we, or is there internet cafe and gaming? There's
Well, if it's a legitimate internet cafe, we don't have anything that
Yeah.
prohibits that.
What's a legitimate internet cafe?
Well,
Explain to me, what are they doing? They're still gaming, aren't they?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, so far, that hasn't been the case. There hasn't been one that we've gone to and went, wow, it really is an internet
Well, maybe
cafe.
if we were to
Okay.
get this information out to local commercial brokers that are doing the leasing and give them some ideas on what to look for when someone comes and says, I want to open up an internet cafe.
Well, we're ahead on that with our Business Watch program. So that's part of what we do with our business improvement groups, is educate them on certain types of businesses that may be not such a good fit for their area there, and working with those commercial leasing centers. But again, it's something that's just come up really this year. We've had sporadic in the past that we've dealt with, but now we've run through a large group that's actually an organized group that's heading these things up. But that's a significant impact on them. If you think about that resource issue, the idea is we're going to, as they come up, we're going to keep seizing their property and taking their money, okay, until it's not lucrative for them to operate here anymore. And that's, so hopefully we'll be drying that up. The other thing I want to talk about, along with the same group of people, and along with Randy Davis doing coordination for cleanups, but we've had 130 homeless camp investigations and cleanups since the 1st of January. So, and you can see some of that impact on major arterials that come into our city, like at 15th and K, 15th West, J8, and 20th Street West, those areas with a real focus. And at the same time, you know, there's a humanitarian aspect of this. So we're working very closely with LASA and some of the service providers out there on that initial contact with these folks, and then these cleanups take place based on some of the, you know, there's health and safety issues related to that. That also goes and coincides with the food service ordinance that we're already speaking to you, that we're currently working on to come up with what's the best plan to address that. But the tonnage is mind-boggling out of that. And I'm going to come up with a number for you for the next meeting of so far what just the tonnage alone has been. It's been significant. And I think the thing that goes along with that, and talking with Captain Weber too, is because there's an association, like, you know, there'll be 25 or 30 bicycle frames at these locations. So as you look at the front side of these things with our larceny numbers, a significant number of those are bike thefts. And as we go into these locations, we find significant bike frames and things because it's serialized, so they can't take that to a recycling center, but they can certainly take all the other parts off the bike and do that. So that's going to be an effort now, working with our recycling centers. If you're seeing these type of thing coming in there, how's that being generated? And again, working on the other side of it too, working closely with those groups on the humanitarian side of this. So with hoping with some of the things we're doing as a community here and opening the new Kensington Center and all those things coming forward, that we'll be able to get a remedy some of this and relieve the community of some of the issues related to this. But that corridor is continual, so we will continue to address that in those high-profile areas of the city. And then recently we've had a number of fires at some of these camps as well. That has become an issue that we're going to focus on what's generating that. So those guys are doing a great job. That's been so far been a great program that we initiated. We're adding 2 more folks to that, to, you know, because the numbers of issues that we're dealing with are significant, and that's done very good. And hopefully trying, you know, relieve the station of some of the lower level things they're not handling, so they can focus on the things that impact our Part 1 crimes, and that's the idea behind it.
Question, Lee, when you guys clean up this encampment, what happens to these individuals? What do you do with them? Where do they go?
Well, we refer them to service providers. That's been worked really well with our ambassador program down here, trying to steer them in a direction that's maybe a more appropriate situation for them. The Salvation Army out there at 60th has done a really good job. There's places that refer them over to Grace Resources for other advocacy providers and things. But, you know, we had the issue with breaking down into our water issues with down into our tunnel system underneath over there off of K4. You know, we've had significant damage that's been created there, cutting through the fences and our whole retention basin system, which has been a problem as well. And then, again, the impact on the businesses that are in the local area there, where there's a number of things that are occurring. Recently, we just had changed ownership at a local hotel that's down in that area that removed their security people. Well, we're not going to have that. Okay, we're going to have a conversation with that group today on what's appropriate for what type of activity they allow there, which also goes along with our human trafficking issues there because it's significant. So there's a lot of things that are spilling over from this. I will say that it's been good working with the groups we're working with, but I think I'll advocate for the ordinance because I believe in it as far as the food service, because then that gets us to locations of appropriate service for folks, and that where we don't have this hodgepodge delivery that's going on all over the city that's creating a lot of the trash issues and some of the blight. And you can see that as you just drive through our corridor at our city, that we're seeing a lot of that is related to the homeless folks. So ongoing, but I think that's a significant number. If you talk 130 investigations already in the first 6 months of the year, that's a lot. And then last Thursday night was the National Night Out celebrated down here in Lancaster. Sheriff McDonald himself, Vice Mayor Christ was there. It was a great turnout. I appreciate Yenny and all the assets you brought out from the Sheriff's Department and the significant participation that we had in coinciding with the farmers market. Tracy did a fantastic job putting it together. We had more vendors and representation than we've ever had, and I've been here 9 years. So far, this has been our best one, and so we'll continue to work on improving that. But Sheriff McDonald actually stayed all the way to about 9:30, and that was nice to see him. And Chief Benedict was here as well as both commanders with Pat Nelson and Blaine were here, and so out there talking to our community. And I thought that was well received by the community.
Very cool.
The sheriff himself commented on it, on what a good event it was, and he's lived in L.A. for quite a while, but he wasn't familiar with really Lancaster at all. And he's been up here twice recently, once for Mitch Speed service, and then for the National Night Out. And he's very impressed. He's very impressed with the city, and then the feeling of the community, and all the patriotism and honoring the veterans and law enforcement. He was very impressed with it. He made a lot of good comments, and he goes to a lot of events.
That's all I have, unless you have some questions for me.
Anything for Lee?
No. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Senator Wilkes' office. You saved the beauty for last, Rick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman Little, Vice Chair Rodriguez, and the rest of the Commission for having us here. As you know, in California right now, this is the end of the session, which I don't know what's going to come out after all the smoke clears, so it would be better that I give a more comprehensive report on Senator Wilkes' 10 bills that he still has, which is an 80% ratio right now, which is fantastic for a local Republican to be able to have 10 bills still going through. I discussed them last meeting. Not knowing how California is going to go after all this, but at the 1st of September we'll know how many new laws, how many new changes, how Prop 47 and AB 109 has affected us. There's a couple bills that are coming out that could change that as we go through. We'll find out at the end of August. I'll give a couple of things that are coming up for people in the community to attend. The Age Well Drive Smart event will be held at AVPH. This is in conjunction with the California Highway Patrol, giving senior citizens a little bit better awareness on what they can do to improve their driving capabilities and what they need to know. That's August 21st from 10 to noon at Antelope Valley Partners for Health, along with Assemblyman Lackey, Scott Wilk, and a few other contributors.
That's for youth? That's for youth, you said? Oh, for
seniors. Seniors. Age well. Drive smart.
I may need that. Yeah. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Senator Scott Wilk and Assemblyman Tom Lackey and the Antelope Valley Veterans Employment Committee are inviting everyone to a 3rd annual Job Fair and Resource Expo on August 24th from 10 to 2, and that'll be at the University of Antelope Valley. Thank you.
Any questions for Rick? Anything? Thanks, Rick. Vanessa.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
We are now in the final month of session, and AB 931 will be the most closely watched law enforcement bill. It changes the standards from acceptable use of force by officers. There is a possibility the bill might be rejected on the Senate floor. If it returns to the Assembly, Tom will be strongly opposing it. He is concerned it will lead to more officer deaths because they will hesitate to act when facing dangerous circumstances. Speaking of Proposition 47, the Save California ballot proposition will not appear before voters until 2020, sadly. This would have fixed the shoplifting loophole in Prop 47 in the definition of violent crime to include things like human trafficking. It will also restore DNA collections for misdemeanor crimes. It will be on 2020 ballot, but not 2018. Assemblyman Lackey is co-authoring an audit request of the LA County Department of Families and Child Services. It would be evaluated this month, the next audit committee hearing. It seems to have a good chance at being approved. This audit should help us get an idea of what needs to be fixed at the department. Tom will be reintroducing his Gabriel's Law and another bill called Anthony's Law in honor of Gabriel Fernandez and Anthony Avalos, who both died at the hands of family members. The two cases are sadly very similar. The bill will improve communications between law enforcement and child services. Unfortunately, the legislature's warped perspective prevented it from being successful, but he's not going to give up on this one. Lastly, Tom is close to getting a bill signed by the governor that will update California's implied consent standard to comply with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. The court ruled that drivers can no longer be charged with criminal penalties for refusing to give a blood sample when being stopped for a DUI. Tom's bill will have the DMV update their DUI guidelines to reflect this change. And then I just wanted to share with you last Sunday, Assemblyman Lackey and Senator Wilk had a youth day at Jethawk Stadium where we brought about 150 kids from kind of underrepresented areas, kids that had never been to a Jethawks game before. And it was awesome. Thank you to the Jethawks and their team. A few of the team members spoke to these kids about staying on track and how important it is to do well in school. And the coaches, it was very encouraging. They all got hot dogs and Cokes, and they played in the bouncy thing before the game. So it was a great event and hopefully made a difference and help these kids to stay on track. And that's it.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Miss. Thank you. Public business from the floor. This is the time where people can speak on non-agendized items. You can fill out a speaker card. You have 3 minutes to speak. We have a couple speakers here. Shannon McDonald.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I had 3 things written on that card before all this, so I got like so much stuff. I'll just be as quick as possible. The 3 things I wrote, the crosswalks, brought it up in City Council. I do believe I sent you. You like that? The crosswalks, that thing is like awesome. You guys need to like think about that. Those crosswalks, we talking about pedestrians, the deaths. We don't know if they're suicide, some of them. You don't know, but there's some mean drivers out there that are purposely threatening to hit people. And those crosswalks are so awesome that they've implemented actually 3, I believe, in Los Angeles. And it stops all traffic from every angle. I don't want to get too much into that because I have other stuff. So that's one. Let's see. Oh, the cameras. I was going by the park, the Heroes Park, and I was looking around and I was looking to see where there would be cameras. I honestly don't want to know where the cameras are. I just want there to be cameras. I don't want anyone to know where the cameras are. I just want them to be there. And I just feel like it would stop a lot of things and help a lot of investigations. I mean, I watch the first 48 on a regular basis. And to see that they can't either catch a criminal because they have not implemented the cameras in the right areas is troubling for me. I just think that we should find a way to put some little on the cool cameras somewhere around there on the buildings that are across the street or whatever. If they're there already, whatever. But I'm just saying I don't need to know where they're at. I just actually think that it's causing us more problem. We're having more crime because things that we want to be transparent with the community on things that we're doing is hurting us too, because they're getting hip to things that they can get away with. And I learned this at Cal State Bakersfield when the chief of police from Bakersfield came to our class. I didn't hear about AB 109 from LA County. I didn't hear about those props or those bills, those assembly bills from the LA County at all. I heard about it from Kern County. They came up with it first. So it was extremely disturbing. And I was like, I hope not everybody finds out about. That's how disturbing and detailed he was about exactly what it was going to imply. And it still bothers me to this day. So we got to get a grip on that. Crime rate increase, very disappointed about. I read in the paper a few years ago that Palmdale, and I came here furious actually at a city council meeting because Palmdale's crime rate had went down 6% after they had implemented community policing. Ours went up. I had mentioned community policing. I believe I did write a memo about it and how the importance of it. But then when I sit up and I see the community service happening in my face. I see you at so many places, it's not even funny, so many events that I'm at. Being a board member for Antelope Valley Partners in Health, I have to pick and choose the events that I attend. And seeing you there is a very pleasant thing. You know, knowing who our leadership is very refreshing. I can't go on with anything else just because they're so, the RVs. How many days is it again? You guys can't answer that for me, right? I forgot. How many days is it on the street?
72.
Yeah. They're blind. They're creating serious blind spots, even in my neighborhood. So I'd like for that to be kind of looked at, because they're still parking them, they're moving them around, things like that. So I have a lot to say, but that's all I'm going to say. So
Shannon, thank you so much. Very good points. I mean,
hope
good,
so.
good stuff.
See, I'm getting better. I'm less nervous every time I get up here now.
Very, very good points. Thank you. Yeah. No, not know where the camera, not where. She doesn't care where cameras at. Just put cameras up. She just wants them up. Yeah. She doesn't care. It's the other people who care what I want to see where the camera's at. So. Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and Commissioners, good morning. I came here yesterday for Healthy Commissions meeting, and I got a little down, and I don't want to fall into the depression of these statistics. It's absolutely overwhelming, but I get lifted by seeing all you good people do good work, and that really helps. Ms. Wilk, that thing with the children at the Jethawks, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. I'm reading this book on philosophy, and it says that man is nothing but what he makes of himself, but people need proper modeling, and so something like that really goes a long way to show that there are decent people out there. And it just keeps getting harder. You look at some of the economic statistics, home foreclosures, medical problems, it's just a tide that is getting worse and worse, and we just have to find new and creative ways. And I know statistics are important. It's quite complex. I always look for good news, though, and I got to tell you that the last city council meeting, I saw something very nice, and I know you just talked about police officers protecting themselves and stuff. It's always a judgment call on how to respond. And we had an old guy come into the city council meeting. He got a little agitated, and the staff managed it perfectly. Didn't jump on him and put him in cuffs, and talked him through it and de-escalated the situation. And I appreciated that quite a bit to see that. So, no, thank you so much. We're working on it. We're trying to figure it out, and I see that, and I want all of you to keep your spirits up, because there are people. I talk to so many people, walking through Walmart and stuff, that watch these meetings on TV. There's an interest, and so it makes a difference to a lot of people that you never really see appreciated. We're dealing with all these other problems, and it can be overwhelming, but there's good stuff. And I'm looking forward to having the judges come in these deferment programs. I mean, we have to come at these things differently, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
David, thank you. Always a pleasure to hear from you, sir. Commissioner comments, anything?
Nope.
Mr. Bozigian, anything, sir? Mr. Paris? Vice Mayor, nothing? We're good? Okay. Then we will stand adjourned until September 12th, 2018.